The sun hung low over the Texarian plains, casting a golden hue across Cole McKnight's ranch, where horses roamed freely and the air smelled of earth and hay. Cole, a rugged cowboy with a sharp wit and a heart deeply connected to his land, leaned against the fence, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Today was unlike any other. Today he was hosting Princess Inara, an alien dignitary from the distant, crystalline world of Juridia. Cole didn't know much about her. She was visiting Earth as part of a cultural exchange program, and her fascination with horses had brought her to his quiet slice of the world. The prospect of hosting royalty had his neighbors whispering for weeks, but Cole was more amused than intimidated. After all, royalty or not, she'd be riding the same horses and eating the same stew as anyone else. The hum of a spacecraft broke the serene quiet of the ranch. A sleek silver vessel descended gracefully, its polished surface reflecting the setting sun. Cole tipped his hat back, watching as the ship's ramp lowered. From the ship emerged Princess Inara, her presence commanding and otherworldly. Her silver hair flowed like liquid starlight, and her violet eyes scanned the surroundings with curiosity and a hint of amusement. "Princess Inara," Cole greeted, his voice steady but warm. "Welcome to the ranch." Inara's gaze met his, and she smiled, a gesture both regal and genuine. "Cole McKnight," she replied, her voice carrying an accent that was melodic yet precise. "It's an honor to be here." Cole chuckled softly. "Honor's mine. Let's get you settled, and then we'll see if you're as excited about horses as they say." As they walked toward the stables, Inara's eyes roamed over the vast fields, the sturdy wooden fences and the grazing horses. The simplicity of the place seemed to enchant her. "Your world feels untamed," she remarked. "Untamed can be beautiful," Cole said, glancing at her. "Just like these horses. They're wild at heart, but that's what makes them special." Inara nodded thoughtfully, her curiosity piqued. She hadn't expected such depth from the human cowboy. The stables were warm and smelled of hay and leather. Cole led Inara to Dusk, a gentle yet spirited mare with a deep chestnut coat. He patted the horse's neck affectionately before turning to Inara. "She's a good one to start with," Cole said, his voice calm and reassuring. "You ever ridden before?" Inara shook her head, a flicker of nervous excitement crossing her face. "No, but I've read extensively about your equestrian traditions." Cole grinned. "Reading's good, but there's no substitute for experience." He guided her step by step, showing her how to mount the horse and hold the reins. His hands brushed hers as he adjusted her grip, and Inara felt a strange warmth spread through her. She dismissed it as excitement for the ride, but the sensation lingered. With Cole leading Dusk by the reins, they began a slow walk across the field. The rhythm of the horse's movement seemed to relax Inara, and soon she was sitting taller, a smile spreading across her face. "This is exhilarating," she said, her voice tinged with wonder. Cole chuckled. "Wait until we pick up some speed. Think you're ready?" Inara hesitated, then nodded. "Show me." He mounted his own horse, Rust, a large black stallion with a streak of white down his face. With a quick whistle, Cole signaled Dusk to follow, and they began to trot. Inara laughed, a sound so genuine it caught Cole off guard. "You're a natural," Cole called over his shoulder. "I didn't expect it to feel this freeing," Inara replied, her violet eyes sparkling with exhilaration. They rode together until the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. By the time they returned to the stables, Inara was glowing, not just from exertion but from an energy Cole couldn't quite place. As he helped her dismount, their eyes met briefly. For a moment, the air between them felt charged, a silent acknowledgement of something unspoken. "Thank you," Inara said softly, "for sharing this part of your world with me." Cole tipped his hat, his voice steady but laced with warmth. "Anytime, Princess." That night, as Inara settled into the guest quarters, she found herself replaying the day's events, her mind lingering on Cole's rugged demeanor and the unexpected ease between them. Meanwhile, Cole stood by the fence, staring out into the starry night, wondering why the presence of a princess from a distant world felt so natural. The morning sun cast a soft golden glow over the Texarian ranch, illuminating the fields where Princess Inara found herself drawn back to the horses. After the previous day's exhilarating ride, she was eager for more. Dressed in Earth-style riding gear that had been tailored for her slender frame, she looked at once regal and adventurous. Cole McKnight, leaning against the corral fence with his trademark easy demeanor, couldn't help but smile as he watched her approach. Her curiosity and determination were contagious, though he'd noticed something else lingering in the air since their first ride. A tension neither had acknowledged. "Morning, Princess," Cole greeted, tipping his hat. "You're up early. Couldn't stay away, huh?" Anara smiled, her violet eyes meeting his. "Your world is different, untamed as you said. I think I like it." Cole chuckled, opening the gate for her. "Well, I reckon Dusk's ready for round 2 if you are." As he helped her saddle the horse, their hands brushed once more, sending a shiver through Anara. This time, she didn't dismiss it. Something about Cole, his quiet confidence, his rugged charm, was stirring feelings she couldn't quite explain. On Juridia, relationships were formal, calculated, but this was raw and unspoken. "Am I holding it correctly?" she asked, referring to the reins. Cole stepped closer, his hands gently guiding hers. "Not bad, but you want a little more slack here." Gives her room to move. Anara glanced up at him, noticing the faint scruff on his jaw and the way the sun caught the warmth in his hazel eyes. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. Cole stepped back, clearing his throat. "Let's get moving before the day heats up too much." They rode side by side across the open fields, the horses' hooves kicking up dust. Anara's laughter rang out again as Dusk broke into a canter, her confidence growing with every step. Cole kept Rust at an easy pace beside her, his heart tugging in a way he hadn't felt in years. "You've got the hang of it now," Cole said as they slowed near a small stream. "Next thing you know, you'll be teaching me a thing or two." Anara dismounted gracefully, her movements fluid, despite her unfamiliarity with Earth's gravity. She knelt by the stream, cupping water in her hands and letting it trickle through her fingers. "Your world feels so real," she said after a moment. "Juridia is beautiful, but it's polished, controlled. Here, it's as if life grows wild." Cole dismounted, tying Rust to a nearby tree. "I reckon that's why I never left. There's something about working the land, taking care of it, that feels honest." Anara turned to him, her expression thoughtful. "You're honest too, Cole McKnight. It's a rare quality." He shrugged, his lips quirking into a faint smile. "Ain't no use pretending to be something I'm not." The mood between them shifted that afternoon as they worked side by side in the barn. Anara insisted on helping Cole with his chores, despite his protests that a princess had no business hauling hay bales. She took to the work with surprising enthusiasm, though her lack of experience led to plenty of laughter. "You're supposed to lift with your legs, not your back," Cole said, stepping behind her to adjust her stance. His hands lightly touched her shoulders to guide her, and Anara froze for a moment, her breath hitching. "Like this?" she asked, her voice quieter than usual. "Yeah, that's better," he replied, his own voice lower. The silence that followed was heavy, but not uncomfortable. Cole stepped back, clearing his throat again as he busied himself with another task. Anara watched him for a moment, her heart racing in a way that was entirely new to her. "Cole," she said suddenly, breaking the quiet. He glanced over his shoulder. "Yeah?" "Do you find me strange?" she asked, her gaze steady. Cole straightened, turning to face her fully. "Strange? No. Different, maybe. But not strange. Why?" Anara hesitated, then took a step closer. "Because I feel different when I'm around you. On Juridia, everything is calculated, planned. But here, with you, it's as if I'm discovering parts of myself I didn't know existed." Her words hung in the air, and for a moment, Cole didn't know what to say. Finally, he stepped forward, his hat in his hands. "You're not the only one feeling that, Anara." The use of her name, spoken without her title, sent a thrill through her. "Then why do you keep pulling away?" she asked, her voice tinged with frustration. "Because I don't want to mess this up," Cole admitted. "You're a princess from a world I can't even imagine, and I'm just a cowboy with a patch of land and a bunch of horses." Anara closed the distance between them, her violet eyes fierce. "You're more than that, Cole McKnight. You're honest, brave, and you make me feel alive." Cole's breath hitched as she reached up, her fingers brushing his cheek. "Anara, stop thinking so much," she whispered. "Just be." Before he could second-guess himself, Cole leaned in, their lips meeting in a kiss that was both tentative and electric. The world around them seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them in that barn. surrounded by the scent of hay and the warmth of the moment. When they finally broke apart, Cole rested his forehead against hers, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're something else, Princess." Inara smiled, her heart full. "So are you, Cowboy." That evening, as the stars filled the Texarian sky, Cole and Inara sat side by side on the porch, their shoulders brushing. The silence between them was comfortable, the kind that spoke of understanding without the need for words. For the first time in years, Cole felt like his life wasn't just tied to the land he loved, but to someone, who had come to mean more than he ever expected. The days following their shared kiss were marked by a strange yet undeniable shift between Cole McKnight and Princess Inara. Though they went about the ranch's daily routine, their conversations carried an underlying warmth, their gestures an unspoken intimacy. Yet, for all the sparks between them, the looming reality of their worlds, so vastly different, began to weigh heavily. One morning, as the golden light of dawn bathed the fields, Cole found himself leaning on the fence, watching Inara ride dusk with growing confidence. She was radiant, her silver hair catching the sunlight, her posture regal yet somehow at home on horseback. For a moment he allowed himself to imagine what life might look like if she stayed, but reality crept in like a shadow. "You're quiet today," Inara said, guiding dusk to a stop beside him. Her violet eyes searched his face, catching the flicker of hesitation in his expression. "Just got a lot on my mind," Cole replied, his voice even. Inara dismounted gracefully, her curiosity piqued. "Care to share?" Cole hesitated, then turned to face her fully. "You're a princess, Inara. You've got responsibilities, people who depend on you. And me? I'm just a guy with some land and a barn full of horses." Her brows knitted together in frustration. "Why do you keep saying that, Cole? Do you think I care about titles or responsibilities when I'm with you?" "It's not about what you care about," Cole said, his voice soft but firm. "It's about the life you're meant to live. And I ain't sure this ranch fits into that picture." Inara stepped closer, her gaze unwavering. "You think you know what life I'm meant to live? My whole existence has been planned for me. Every step, every decision. For once, I want something that's mine. And that's here. With you." Cole stared at her, his heart aching with both hope and doubt. "Inara, I don't want to be the reason you regret anything down the line. And I don't want to live a life wondering what could have been," she replied, her voice breaking slightly. "You make me feel free, Cole. For the first time, I'm not just a princess. I'm me." Before he could respond, the sound of a low, distant hum interrupted them. Both turned toward the horizon, where the faint silhouette of a Juridian diplomatic cruiser appeared in the sky. Inara's face fell, her shoulders tensing. "They've come for me," she said quietly, her voice laced with a mix of resignation and defiance. The cruiser landed with precise elegance, its gleaming hull reflecting the midday sun. From it emerged a small delegation of Juridian envoys, their attire formal and imposing. At their head was Advisor Zevran, a stoic figure known for his strict adherence to protocol. His sharp, calculating gaze landed on Inara immediately. "Princess Inara," Zevran said, bowing slightly, "your absence has caused great concern. It is time to return to Juridia." Inara crossed her arms, her posture defiant. "I'm not ready to leave." Zevran's brow furrowed. "You have obligations, Princess. The council grows restless. Your father expects your presence." Cole, who had remained on the porch watching the exchange, stepped forward, his movements deliberate. He tipped his hat slightly, his voice calm but resolute. "She's not going anywhere she doesn't want to." Zevran turned to him, his expression a mix of disdain and curiosity. "And you are?" "Cole McKnight," he replied, his gaze steady. "Owner of this ranch, and for now the princess's host." "Host?" Zevran said with a sneer. "Or distraction?" Cole's jaw tightened, but he held his ground. "I don't know much about politics, but I do know she's got a right to make her own choices. That doesn't seem to be what you're offering." Inara stepped between them, her voice sharp. "Enough, Zevran. I'll return when I'm ready, and not a moment before." Zevran hesitated, clearly unprepared for her defiance. "Princess, you risk alienating the council. They see this detour as reckless." "Let them," Inara snapped. "I've spent my life doing what others expect. For once I'm doing what feels right." Zevran's eyes narrowed. "You've been corrupted by this primitive world." Cole took a step forward, his voice low but cutting. "She's made her choice. Maybe it's time you start listening. The tension hung thick in the air. Finally Zevran straightened, his expression cold. Very well, but know this, princess. The council's patience is not infinite. With that, he motioned to his entourage, and they retreated back to the cruiser. The ship ascended with a roar, disappearing into the clouds. The silence that followed was heavy. Anara turned to Cole, her violet eyes filled with emotion. You didn't have to stand up for me like that. Yes, I did, Cole said simply. Because you deserve to be heard. Her gaze softened and she stepped closer, her voice trembling slightly. I've never felt more heard than I do with you. Cole reached out, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. You're strong, Anara. Stronger than anyone gives you credit for. She smiled faintly, leaning into his touch. And you're stubborn, Cole McKnight. Stubborn enough to make me believe this could work. For the rest of the day, they worked side by side on the ranch, their bond deepening with every shared glance and unspoken word. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the stars, Cole spoke softly. If you ever need to go back, he began, I'll understand. Anara shook her head, her voice firm. I'll go back when I'm ready, but only on my terms. And if you'll have me, Cole, I'd like to stay here a while longer. Cole smiled, his heart full. You're welcome here as long as you want, princess. As the stars twinkled overhead, they both knew their journey was far from over. But for now, they had found something rare and precious. A connection that transcended worlds. The days after the departure of the Jeridian cruiser were filled with a delicate balance of newfound peace and lingering unease. Cole McKnight and Princess Anara settled back into life on the ranch, but the shadow of her obligations loomed over them like a gathering storm. Cole tried to distract himself with the work of the ranch. He repaired fences, tended to the horses, and prepared for the changing seasons. Yet every moment he wasn't busy, his mind wandered back to the way Anara had stood her ground against her people, and the way her defiance had sparked something undeniable between them. Anara, too, found herself grappling with the weight of her decisions. She spent hours riding across the plains, the wind in her hair and the freedom of the open land, giving her a temporary escape from the rigid expectations of Jeridia. Yet at night, sitting by the fire with Cole, she couldn't help but feel a pull, a mix of longing and fear for what lay ahead. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and bathed the ranch in warm amber light, Anara approached Cole in the stables. He was brushing down Rust, his black stallion, the rhythmic motion a steadying force for his thoughts. Cole, she said softly, her voice cutting through the quiet. He looked up, his hazel eyes meeting hers. Something on your mind, princess? She hesitated before stepping closer. Do you regret standing up to Zevran? Cole leaned against Rust's flank, considering her question. No, he said finally. I'd do it again in a heartbeat, but that doesn't mean I don't worry about what it might have cost you. Anara reached out, her hand lightly resting on his arm. What it might have cost us, she corrected, because whatever comes next, I'm not facing it alone. Cole smiled faintly, but his gaze was serious. You know it's not going to be easy, don't you? Your people aren't just going to let you walk away. I know, she said, her voice firm, but I've spent my life following their rules. For once, I'm choosing what feels right. Her words settled over him like a warm breeze, and for a moment, the world outside the barn didn't matter. They stood there in the quiet, the bond between them growing stronger with every unspoken promise. The calm didn't last. Late one night, as the ranch lay under a blanket of stars, the hum of approaching ships shattered the silence. Cole woke instantly, grabbing his boots and a plasma rifle he kept stored for emergencies. He stepped onto the porch, his heart sinking as he saw two Jeridian tactical shuttles descending onto the open field. Anara appeared beside him, her silver hair loose and her expression sharp. They're here for me. Cole tightened his grip on the rifle. Then they've got a fight on their hands. No, Cole, she said, placing a hand on his arm. This isn't your battle. The hell it ain't, he replied, his voice low but fierce. You're here, on my land, and that makes it my fight too. Before she could argue further, the shuttles landed, and a squad of Jeridian soldiers emerged, their gleaming armor catching the moonlight. At their head was Zevran, his expression colder than before. Princess Anara, Zevran called, his voice carrying across the field. You've defied the council for the last time, Surrender yourself now, or we will take you by force. Cole stepped forward, his rifle leveled. You're not taking her anywhere, Zevran sneered. You think a simple human cowboy can stand against the might of Jaridia? I think a man who stands for what's right is more powerful than you'll ever understand. Cole shot back, his voice steady. Inara stepped beside him, her presence commanding despite the tension. Zevran, you forget your place. I am still the princess of Jaridia, and I will decide my own fate. Zevran's eyes narrowed. Then you leave us no choice. With a flick of his hand, the soldiers advanced. Cole fired a warning shot into the ground at their feet, his voice ringing out. Next one ain't a warning. The soldiers hesitated, glancing at each other. Their hesitation gave Inara the opening she needed. Drawing on her Jaridian training, she stepped forward, her movements swift and precise. She disarmed the nearest soldier, her borrowed weapon a blur as she stood protectively beside Cole. Stand down, she commanded, her voice carrying the weight of her royal authority. For a moment, the soldiers wavered, caught between their orders and the presence of their princess. But Zevran's voice cut through the tension. Arrest her. She's no longer fit to rule. The fight that followed was a blur of motion and chaos. Cole and Inara moved in sync, their bond unspoken but powerful. Cole's sharpshooting kept the soldiers at bay, while Inara's agility and combat training allowed her to disarm and disable those who got too close. As the last soldier fell, breathing but incapacitated, Zevran stood alone, his composure fraying. You've doomed yourself, Inara, he spat. The council will never forgive this. Inara stepped forward, her weapon lowered, but her gaze fierce. Let them try, I am done living by their rules. Zevran glared at her, then turned to Cole. And you, human, you've made an enemy of the most powerful empire in the galaxy. Cole lowered his rifle, his expression calm but unyielding. Maybe. But I've also got the trust of someone worth fighting for. That's enough for me. Zevran's sneer deepened, but he knew he was beaten. Without another word, he retreated to one of the shuttles, his remaining soldiers following. The ships lifted off, their departure leaving the ranch in silence once more. As the dust settled, Cole turned to Inara, his chest heaving from the adrenaline. You all right? She nodded, stepping closer to him. Thanks to you. You're something else, princess, he said with a faint smile. And you, cowboy, she replied, her voice soft but steady, are everything I didn't know I needed. Under the vast Texarian sky, they stood together, their bond forged in fire and strengthened by the promise of what was to come. For the first time, neither of them felt alone, and for the first time, they felt truly free. The morning after the clash with the Jaridian forces, the ranch was quiet, but tension hung heavy in the air. Cole McKnight and Princess Inara sat on the porch, the events of the previous night still fresh in their minds. Inara's violet eyes scanned the horizon as if expecting another cruiser to descend at any moment. You think they'll come back? Cole asked, breaking the silence. They will, Inara replied, her voice calm but resolute. Zevran doesn't act without the council's approval. He retreated because he wasn't authorized to escalate further. But now, they'll return with their full backing. Cole leaned back, his gaze fixed on the dusty fields stretching out before them. Then we'll be ready. Inara turned to him, a faint smile tugging at her lips despite the weight of their situation. You say that as if we're an army, Cole. It's just the two of us. Two of us, Cole said with a shrug, and a whole lot of grit. By mid-afternoon, a message arrived, delivered not by a ship, but through Inara's personal communicator. The holographic projection of Advisor Zevran flickered to life in the center of the room, his sharp features as unyielding as ever. Princess Inara, he began, his tone clipped. The council has convened. They have issued an ultimatum. Inara crossed her arms, her expression impassive. Let's hear it. Zevran's gaze flicked briefly to Cole, who stood silently nearby, then returned to the princess. You are to return to Jaridia immediately and submit to the council's authority. Failure to comply will result in your designation as a rogue royal, stripping you of your title and all privileges. Your presence on Earth will be considered an act of rebellion, subject to military intervention. Inara didn't flinch. So they mean to force my hand. Your actions have left them no choice, Zevran replied. Your association with this human has only compounded their concerns. At that, Cole stepped forward, his voice steady. This human has done more for her than your whole council combined. Zevran ignored him, his gaze fixed on Inara. You have until sundown to comply. The transmission ended, leaving the room in silence. Inara sat down heavily, her shoulders slumping for the first time since her arrival on Earth. What are you thinking? Cole asked, crouching beside her. I'm thinking, she said slowly, that they've underestimated me. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting the Texarian plains in hues of orange and gold, Inara and Cole prepared for what they knew would be a defining moment. Inara wore a Geridian combat suit she'd retrieved from her belongings, its sleek, iridescent material catching the fading light. Cole, ever the cowboy, donned his usual rugged attire but strapped a plasma pistol to his belt. Nice look, Inara said, smirking as she adjusted the fit of her suit. Thanks, Cole replied with a grin. Yours ain't too bad either. The humor was short-lived as the sound of approaching ships filled the air. 2 Geridian warcruisers descended onto the open field, their engines humming ominously. This time, it wasn't just Zevran. A delegation of council emissaries accompanied him, their ornate robes a stark contrast to the soldiers flanking them. Inara and Cole stepped out to meet them, standing shoulder to shoulder. The council emissaries disembarked first, their leader, Councillor Vera, a tall, imposing woman with piercing silver eyes, stepping forward. Princess Inara, Vera began, her tone cold. You have defied our laws, endangered diplomatic relations, and consorted with an outsider. Your actions have left us with no choice but to strip you of your title unless you return willingly. Inara took a deep breath, her voice ringing out with clarity and strength. You speak of laws, but what of freedom? What of the right to choose one's path? I will not live my life bound by your expectations. Vera's eyes narrowed. You would throw away your legacy for this, man? Inara glanced at Cole, her gaze softening briefly, before returning to Vera. I would fight for the chance to be more than a title. And yes, I would fight for him too. The councillors murmured among themselves, their discontent evident. Zevran stepped forward, his voice sharp. You are delusional, if you think one human and a few noble words will save you. Cole's hand hovered near his pistol, but he didn't draw. You're right about one thing, Zevran. Words alone won't do it, but I reckon actions speak louder. At that moment, a low rumble filled the air. From behind the distant hills, a small fleet of Earthships appeared, unarmed but bold. They were piloted by local ranchers and settlers, friends of Cole who had rallied when he called for support. The sight of them brought a flicker of uncertainty to the Geridian forces. You see, Cole said, his voice steady, you're not just fighting her. You're fighting everyone who believes in the right to live free. For a tense moment, the two sides faced off, the threat of violence heavy in the air. Then, Councillor Vira raised her hand, silencing her soldiers. Enough, she said, her tone clipped. Princess Inara, your defiance has proven costly, but perhaps there's merit in your conviction. Inara blinked, her stance easing slightly. You're reconsidering? We will not force you to return, Vera said, her gaze stern. But understand this, your decision severs your ties to the throne. You will live as a free individual, with no claim to Geridia's legacy. Inara straightened, her voice steady. I accept, Vera nodded curtly, then turned to Zevran. Withdraw the troops, this matter is resolved. Zevran bristled but complied, his soldiers retreating to the cruisers. Within moments, the ships lifted off, disappearing into the sky. As silence fell over the ranch once more, Inara turned to Cole, a mixture of relief and sadness in her eyes. I'm free, Cole, but I've lost everything. Cole placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice soft. Not everything, Princess. You've still got yourself, and you've got me. A tear slipped down her cheek, but her smile was radiant. That's more than I could have hoped for. Together, they stood under the stars, their bond unbroken and their future unwritten. For the first time in their lives, they were truly free to choose what came next. Together.